Hello, and welcome to this narrated PowerPoint on curriculum design in RE. This is part of a growing suite of such resources which take a different aspect of RE in turn, giving space to reflect on what effective RE might look like in our settings. In this first PowerPoint, I will explore with you effective principles of curriculum design in RE, and we're going to use 3 different images to support us in our thinking here. First of all, on the left is the spade. Imagine we're preparing the ground. We all have in our schools a unique context or soil. As with gardeners faced with an area of the garden, they will have a vision for a particular piece of soil, something future orientated, which they wish to see to fruition. In terms of us as RE teachers and leaders, we can think about our own context, which voices speak into it, as well as our intent for what the subject is, as informed by the vision of the school. Secondly, to achieve our vision-informed intent, we can think about curriculum design as building a wall. How can we design our curriculum maps so we achieve our intents? And we'll also look there at some of the common pitfalls. Our third image is the wall with cement between the bricks, so we'll be thinking about strengthening the wall. This will be explored in 2 separate narrated PowerPoints, one on spaced retrieval and one on disciplinary RE. So let's start thinking a little bit about the context of education in England in which we're working. So over the last decade, education in England has largely been obsessed with what's called the knowledge problem. What's knowledge? Why is that knowledge important? And how should we as teachers allow pupils to understand that knowledge has very much directed curriculum thinking and models, and it can be seen within both the Ofsted and the SciAMS framework. This goes back about a decade ago to a guy called Tim Oates, who was at the time a professor at the University of Cambridge. And in his thinking, he decided that there were 4 aspects of curriculum which we should think about. First of all, the intended curriculum. What do we intend through our curriculum for pupils to know, to understand, and to do? And that can be thought about as by the end of their time with us, at the end of primary school, secondary school, middle school, first school, but also at the end of each particular phase of learning. Key stage 1, lower key stage 2, key stage 2 for instance. And once we have that clear intention of what we want to teach and what we want pupils to know and do in mind, we can then think about the enacted curriculum. So this very much is the curriculum as experienced by pupils in the classroom. So what are they taught and how are they taught it? And this can be impacted by a number of things, such as the actual teachers in the classroom, how they choose to deliver it, how confident they are in delivering or facilitating those learning experiences. And of course, they can be supported through their CPD as well. It's also impacted a lot by the availability of resources, so to enable that intended curriculum to come to fruition. Thirdly, assessed curriculum. What are the subsection of each curriculum subject that we feel could be assessed? So it may be certain aspects of the mathematics curriculum, it might be certain aspects of the geography curriculum. In this instance, we're thinking about the RE curriculum. So which specific parts are we deciding as teachers and subject leaders are appropriate and useful to assess, so we know how that curriculum journey is going? We've got our intended curriculum, we're teaching it in the classroom. How do we know that it's actually working? And maybe we can use this clear assessment aspects to guide our thinking here. But ultimately, it's the 4th one which is the most important. What have pupils learnt through their curriculum experience in the school? I'm sure quite a few of you are starting to think, okay, I can see where this is leading towards, because Ofsted have been very much influenced by the thinking of Tim Oates, and you can see how the intended curriculum has now formed intent, that the enacted curriculum of Tim Oates has become the implement, and the impact section, the final one of the 3 I's of Ofsted, is where the assessed curriculum and the learned curriculum have dovetailed. How do we know what the impact of our curriculum is? And the Church of England Education Office, when Church of England schools, we mirror very much this Ofsted framework of intent, of implement, and of impact, but very much framed by the vision. So what is the school's distinctive Christian vision? And therefore, how is that going to inform our intent for the subject, but also how it's implemented and how we're looking at the impact of RE in our schools? It's always really fruitful to take a step back and think about, before we design our curriculum, what the different voices are that speak into our context. Certainly, the RE curriculums that I've found most effective are those that the subject leader has really thought carefully about their context and those voices which speak into their school. So on the left of the slide, you can see a number of different voices that speak into our context as Church of England schools. You've got top centre the school vision, so the distinctive Christian vision of the school, which is there underpinning everything the school does, enabling all to flourish. You've also got the Symes and Ofsted frameworks, which we spoke about in the previous slide. As well as this, we need to think about what type of school we are, whether we're voluntary aided, voluntary controlled, an academy, a free school, and a whole wide range of other things, because they'll determine whether we follow the Bedfordshire agreed syllabus, the Hertfordshire agreed syllabus, or we have more flexibility in deciding which resources and syllabi that we want to draw upon in creating our curriculum. We want to think about our school context as well. Are we one form entry? Are we mixed aged? Because they're going to have an impact upon our curriculum design and how we frame those units to build on each other from early years all the way through to year 4, year 6, or from year 5 to year 8. We also want to take more broadly, the Church of England Vision for Education and the Church of England Statement of Entitlement for RE. And if you haven't come across the Church of England Statement of Entitlement, I'd invite you to go look at that as soon as you can, because that's a really, really useful document, kind of outlining what amazing RE can be in our schools. So I'd invite you now to have a bit of a think about your own context using the boxes on the left. So what is your soil and what is the ground that you are tending? So once we've done a little bit of thinking about our context, we can start to use that thinking to inform what our curriculum intent is for RE. Now it's really important that we have that intent for the subject, because unless we have a clear endpoint in mind or an overarching why we're doing what we're doing, we can't then think about how we can construct a curriculum to achieve that intent. If there is no endpoint in mind, then there is no progression. There is no idea of we are building our units year by year for what really? We need to have that clear point in mind. So we have to think about what our intent for the subject is, but really importantly for Church of England schools, how that reflects our school's vision. Now in strand 7 of the Symes evaluation schedule, one of the first bullet points is this one here in the box at the top. How effective the school is in ensuring that religious education expresses the school's Christian vision. Now there needs to be a little bit of a link between that, because otherwise they seem a little bit disjointed. So to give a few examples, I've taken and lifted a few Christian visions from schools and kind of posed some questions that I would ask of that school to see if that link there is really clear between the school's vision and their RE intent. So first of all, there may be a school that has underpinning their school's distinctive Christian vision this verse of Matthew 5:16. We want pupils and staff to flourish, and we want them to shine brightly as lights in the world. Wonderful. But how is that then impacting and informing the school's RE intent? So I might want to ask, okay, well, if everything the school is doing is supposedly there to enable pupils to shine as lights in the world. How is RE contributing to that? How is that contributing to that shining, and in which ways? Is the school thinking about shining in terms of knowledge and understanding of different religions and worldviews? Is it talking about, well, to shine there needs to be respectful dialogue with people of different beliefs and other faiths? I'd be interested to know how schools adopting and embracing that vision is thinking about how that's taking shape in RE. To give another example, many schools have gone towards the vision from the original vision document and saying, well, everything in our school is about giving life and life in all its fullness from John 10:10. So again, I'd like to ask schools that are doing this, well, how is RE contributing to that fullness of life? It could be for them as pupils, for the school community, for others elsewhere. If they're bringing in through other explanations of their vision, well, life in all its fullness for us is all about developing curiosity and a love of learning. Or how is RE allowing pupils to develop that curiosity and that love of learning? Or is it not thought about as much as it could be? To give a final example, let's take a school that has this as its underpinning vision, taken from the parable of the sower in Luke 8. By sowing the seeds of resilience and aspirations, children are embraced by the small school community, again taking mind of their context, to develop dignity and wisdom in order to flourish in the field of life. So there's quite a lot that the school is hoping to do through its vision there, which is wonderful. So then how is RE allowing pupils to develop the resilience and aspirations? Resilience towards what? Aspirations for what? In what way and to what end? And what about the second part of their vision statement, where they say they want to develop pupil dignity and wisdom? Well, how in RE are pupils to be treated with dignity? Maybe that's something to do with pupil voice and with pupils able to share their views within a safe space in a way that they're not ridiculed for giving their perspective or their views. And what about wisdom? There's some amazing opportunities for pupils to engage with the wisdom of some incredible religious and spiritual traditions. And so do pupils and teachers, are they able to make that link between the vision and the intent of the subjects and what they're doing in RE? It may well be that as a school, when you're thinking about intent of RE, you may want to look towards Bedfordshire or the Hertfordshire agreed syllabus, or maybe even the balanced RE documents from the Church of England, just to give a few signposts about what the aims and intent of RE could be more broadly. And then as a subject leader and as a school community, you can start to think about, okay, how exactly can our aims for RE as a subject then start to be moulded into a vision-informed intent. So it's not an intent that's just been copied and pasted from some RE reports, but it's something that's really personal and important to us in our community. Before going forward, it's useful to reflect where we are in our own school journey with regards to having a vision-informed intent for RE. Perhaps you already have an intent, and it's always worth considering how it is vision-informed at this stage. How is it an expression of the school's distinctive Christian vision, as mentioned in the SIAM schedule quote above? If you're here in your journey, it's useful to keep this in mind as we proceed and think about how we can effectively design a curriculum to achieve our vision-informed intent. Or perhaps you're at the stage where you are currently in the process of thinking about or revising your intent for religious education, and how this might be shared with school colleagues in the community. You may be thinking about how this intent can be an expression of the school's distinctive Christian vision. I wonder what your next steps might be. As we start to move from looking at our context and what our vision and intent for RE might be, towards constructing a really strong and effective and well thought through curriculum that helps us to achieve that intent, I've collated a few SIAMs and Ofsted extracts which I feel are slightly representative of what effective and ineffective curriculum design might look like as it's emerging from various reports. What's about to follow on this slide are a number of these extracts, and I'd invite you just to spend a bit of time having a read through them. And I wonder what stands out to you. So what are the common themes that are being picked up on, and the aspects which are being focused on at the moment? This would all be useful as we go forward through this PowerPoint. Okay, so we're now going to start thinking about designing this curriculum. Now, I found this quote which has really stuck with me over the last few years, and it's talking about how we should construct our curriculum, as I mentioned before, with an intent, with a vision in mind. So the quote says, "Should we construct our walls like an architect with a certain vision in mind, or will it just be a pile of random bricks?" Over the last 5, 10, 15 years throughout RE reports, there's been a real sense that curriculum design in RE, particularly in primary RE, has often been really, really weak. And part of the reason for that has been that there hasn't been a clear narrative or sense of progression from when pupils arrive at the school and when they leave. It's a bit like a random smorgasbord of random units where if someone were to come and to look at that curriculum map, there'd be questions as, well, why is that being taught there and then? And why does it seem to be that the same things are being taught in different years, and there's no progression between what they're learning in year 2 and what they're learning in year 4 and what they're learning in year 6? So as we go forward, it's useful to think about how we're carefully laying on bricks, kind of knowledge, and then that leads to knowledge that we're going to build on, and knowledge that we're going to build on all the way through the curriculum. Shortly, we're going to look at a few fabricated curriculum maps, and we'll look at them with a few principles of effective curriculum design in mind. And once we've done that, we can then have a look at our own curriculum maps as they stand to see what we think there is really strong, really great, and if there's anything that we need to tweak or refresh with some of these principles and our vision and intent in mind. So the first question is this: does the curriculum design allow pupils to build on their knowledge and understanding of concepts from early years to Key Stage 2, or replace that with whatever age phase pupils join the school and whichever one they leave the school? Now, this is a really important one to think about because we have a very limited time in terms of our curriculum space that we give to RE, and on average it's usually about an hour a week or equivalent. So by selecting certain units or certain knowledge that we want pupils to inquire into and understand, there's lots of units or aspects that we're necessarily, because of our restrictions in the curriculum space, going to have to decide to leave out. Now, there isn't a curriculum perfect map out there, but there is a big difference between a curriculum map that's really well informed by the vision and the context and one that isn't really thought about. So if we then think about the curriculum maps to come, can we see a bit of a learning journey? Okay, they're looking at salvation in the early years, and they're then taking that knowledge and understanding when they look at salvation again in year 1 and in year 2 and year 3 and in year 4. Or is it a sense that they're looking at Islam in Key Stage 1, but then that's not being built on as they go throughout the school, and it kind of seems weird and disjointed and isolated there? But a school might then decide, okay, we're looking at Islam in year 1, and they're going to get this knowledge and understanding there, and then they're going to build upon that in year 3, and then build upon that again in year 5. Second question: how is the tension between breadth versus depth seen, or even balance versus progression? Now, every school will walk this line in a different way, but if we try to do too much, it's going to be too shallow, and pupils may be confused because of the amount of units and religions and worldviews they're studying, and they don't really get into the deep, meaty theological, sociological, philosophical questions within those. Contrastly, it may be that we're doing too few things really well, in that they may be able to know so much about Judaism or Christianity, but then know little else about any others. So how is the tension between breadth and depth seen in these curriculum maps and also in R1? Third of all, are pupils looking at religion systematically, that is, one by one on their own, before they're inquired into thematically side by side? Now, a common pitfall and issue of many curriculum maps about 10 years ago were that pupils may look into a few religions within Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2, such as Christianity and Judaism, and then they may get to the summer term and then all of a sudden they're looking at a unit on pilgrimage or different beliefs about life after life, throwing in other religions such as Islam and Sikhism and Hinduism that they haven't encountered in their own right yet. Now, an issue with that is, by the time they finish their time with you at the school and they're asked about those religions, they have quite a limited amount of engagement with that religious tradition that they've either likely forgotten it or they haven't really gone into enough depth at all. Which kind of brings us to our final point is, by the end of their time with us, could they pass the microphone test? Now imagine, if you will, that you give your year 6s or year 8s or year 4s a microphone and ask them to stand in front of a class for 1 minute to talk about Christianity. Now, could they do it? Have they been able to build on their knowledge, and that knowledge has been passed into their long-term memory through some really clever use of space retrieval, that they can talk about that religion for a minute? Or have they not been given sufficient curriculum opportunities that hasn't been built on, that they can't pass the microphone test? So it could be that with Hinduism, for example, an experience I know of, where in year 2 they look at Diwali and they get the clay out and they make the Diwali lamps, but they've not given any space behind why they've done that. Why do Hindus celebrate Diwali? What's the significance of Diva lamps? Perhaps in year 4, the RE teacher there didn't know what they did in year 2 when they made the Diva lamps. So they think, okay, when I'm thinking about Hinduism, what should I do? Let's do the story of Diwali, Rama and Sita, get the clay out, do Diva lamps. And again, that's repeated again in year 6. Now, I wonder whether by the end of year 6, pupils could talk for a whole minute about Hinduism, as they've only encountered a very small subsection of Hindu belief and practice, and one that's been replicated over time. So do keep these questions in mind as we look at the next 2 curriculum maps. So here is our first example of a curriculum map. With the questions in mind from the previous slide, have a think about how effective this curriculum map might be. Hopefully you agree that there's quite a lot to be desired in this curriculum map. For one thing, it's really hard to see how knowledge and understanding is being built on either year by year or by age phase. For instance, although parable is being covered here in reception, what is their knowledge and understanding, and how is that being built on as they go through? There are some instances where you can kind of see a bit of progression. For example, here in year 1 you have a unit on the church, and then the church is covered once again in year 4. However, it'll be really important for this school to consider what exactly is the knowledge and understanding that they're hoping pupils to get in year 1, and then how is that being built upon in year 4. And there's also the question of why they think those units are important for pupils in that context. There's lots of other units here which we can't really see how they're being built on. For example, Islam in year 1, they're doing Islam in year 1. I mean, what are they learning about? Why do they think that's important? And then in the rest of the curriculum map, that knowledge isn't being built upon. And the same can be said for Judaism here in year 5. You've got 6 weeks or 6 lessons here on Judaism. Might it be useful for this school to think about building in units earlier in the curriculum map to supplement this as well? Perhaps they could look at Judaism in year 1, build on their knowledge in year 3, and then build on their knowledge in year 5. You might also think, when you look across this curriculum map more broadly, that they're just trying to do too much. There are too many units in here, and it may mean that pupils are a little bit confused by the time they finish year 6 and they can't really pass that microphone test. Here is our second example of a curriculum map that we're going to explore during this session. Have a think about what the narrative is of this curriculum map. Are pupils building on their knowledge and understanding year by year, age phase by age phase within this curriculum map or not? And also, how is the tension between breadth and depth held? Which units have they opted to choose which they feel is right for their pupils in their context here, and which units have they therefore then left out? So a little bit of a quick commentary on this curriculum design. Now, as we discussed at the start, any curriculum design to be effective needs to have a clear aim or intent at the end in order to frame the rest of the curriculum map, because there needs to be an endpoint that all of this is aiming towards. So let's take, for instance, the commonly used aim of RE, coming from the Balanced RE religious literacy documents, that the aim of RE is to enable pupils to hold balanced and informed conversations about religion and belief. So a subject leader here has thought, okay, for the pupils in my context, what do I feel are the religions that they need to encounter, the questions they need to be engaged with, in order for them to have that balanced and informed conversation where they are. And as I mentioned before, that will be different for each school, which means that there isn't a perfect curriculum map, because what's ideal for one setting may be completely different for another setting, be that inner city London versus very rural Norfolk. So if we have a look at this curriculum map, we can start to see the choices that the subject leader has made to try to build in that coherence, that sequence, that narrative. And we can see this primarily through the use of the Understanding Christianity units. So we can see in Autumn 2 how the units of incarnation kind of fill a firm place within this map, where what they're learning in reception is then being built upon in year 1. The Digging Deeper unit of Understanding Christianity is then building on their knowledge and understanding once again in year 2, as it is in year 4 and as it is in year 6. We can see this again with the salvation units in spring 2. So we've got the salvation strand, that concept, forming a significant part of their curriculum experience. Now, this school may have decided, when thinking about their context, that they have a significant proportion of pupils from a Jewish and or a Muslim community. So in that case, they've decided to focus on Judaism, and you can see how Judaism units punctuate year 1, year 2, year 3 and year 5, and also through Islam. So in year 3 there are 2 units, one in year 5, one in year 6. And we can also see 3 units on Hinduism, so that pupils are getting a good amount of subject knowledge and curriculum time exploring this spiritual tradition. You'll notice also that at the end of some of the units, some thematic units have been brought in, and these units can be really effective if used well. So you'll notice at the end of year 2, the thematic unit on who is an inspiring person is used, but notice how it only uses Christian and Jewish people. Now this makes sense because up to this date they've only explored Judaism and Christianity, although they may have looked at slightly at other religious traditions within these 3 units in reception. It'd seem a little bit odd to all of a sudden ask pupils to consider Sikhism or Hinduism or Islam when they haven't had a significant amount of curricular time to explore those religious traditions on their own. Again, when it comes to the thematic units in year 5 and 6, what will make our community a more respectful place, and why do some people believe in God and some people not? It might be really fruitful for pupils to draw on their knowledge and understanding from those religious traditions that they've already considered in the curriculum map. And it would seem a little bit disjointed perhaps to all of a sudden include Buddhism and Sikhism within that. Of course, when it comes to that question of breadth and depth, they've decided in this school to focus on 4 religions and do them really well, because they found before that when they tried to do all 6 religions or all principal main religions, that pupils got a little bit confused by the end of the time with them at the school. Some schools are either determined, depending on their school type, to follow particular agreed syllabuses, where those syllabuses specify the amount of religions that need to be included within particular age phases and ranges. So do have a look at that as appropriate to your school and your context. Other schools are a little bit more creative in how they provide that coverage. It could be through RE weeks, where they look at particular religions and beliefs that don't necessarily get time in units, but they feel is really important for pupils to engage into, or perhaps even RE days. Now, a really interesting thing to do with our curriculum maps is to ask the question, what is the coherence and the sequencing? And we can look at that in two different ways. We can look at our vertical coherence, and we can also look at our horizontal coherence. And I'm going to show you what I mean just now. So with our vertical coherence, it's thinking about what the learning journey is for our pupils all the way from the start from their time with us all the way through to the end. So again, we can see how in this curriculum map, their journey from year R through to year 6, they're going to continually build on their knowledge and understanding of the concept of incarnation, going deeper and deeper into their inquiry as they go through, just as they will with salvation, and just as they will do as they explore the various units on Judaism. But we can also think about our horizontal coherence. So across the year, how are pupils' knowledge and understanding being built on, and why are those units in the order that they are? Now, for some of them, it may make sense for them to fit into a particular place or time of our academic year because it fits well with a liturgical year or a certain date in a certain religious calendar or a festival. So for instance, it kind of makes sense that salvation falls at the end of spring too, as within the liturgical year, pupils will be exploring Easter through collective worship or through things more generally. And the same, it makes sense for incarnation to fall in autumn too, as it's kind of fits with life in generally in Britain and everything that's going around to do with Christmas. Questions might be asked if salvation was placed here, or if it was placed in summer too, although I know of some schools that are thinking about, well, if we want this learning journey to follow horizontally, it makes sense for a particular order of the units to fall in a particular way. So it might be, for instance, that in year R, the school feels that before pupils can think and have a really good crack at incarnation, they need to explore the word and the concept of God first. And to place God or creation in summer 2 and jump straight into incarnation, pupils may struggle a bit in making that links, and knowledge may kind of drop or not be secured there. Again, we can think about the horizontal coherence within other units as well. So in year 4, it'd be interesting to ask this subject leader in this school why they've chosen to put creation and fall first, and then incarnation, and then gospel, and then their unit on Hinduism, and then kingdom of God. Why have they chosen to put kingdom of God in spring 1? Might it be better in autumn 1, or is there a particular reason why they felt that that unit is best there? So hopefully that helps us to think about the importance of both vertical coherence and also horizontal coherence in our curriculum maps and in our curriculum design. Certainly, lots of schools find it useful to colour code their maps just to make that really clear what the progression is, what the balance is, and how that coherence and design is seen in practice. I'd invite you now to have a look at your curriculum map as it currently stands for RE in your school. Take the 4 questions below and have a think about the strengths of your curriculum map as it stands at the moment, and also those things which could be refreshed, renewed, or improved. It's really important once again to think about, whilst you do this, what is your end point in mind? What's your vision-informed intent for the subject, and how does your curriculum map allow your pupils in your school to achieve that intent? So far we've looked at curriculum design from a macro perspective. So we've had a look at how we can build that wall using the units, as it were, as different bricks of this wall. So it's not just a a seemingly random pile of bricks, but we've constructed and placed these units to become more like a wall that an architect has built with a clear vision in mind. Now, once we've done this, we can start to think about each unit in turn, each individual brick, and think about how we can make that as effective as it can be as part of pupils' learning journey. Now, I'm going to show a couple of questions, or a selection of questions rather, on this slide. We're not going to discuss these in detail now, but it might be that once you've looked at curriculum design as a whole, over time you could start to explore some of these questions, both as a subject leader, as a teacher, and then as a school. So as we come to land, we're just going to reflect on 4 really important aspects that have come through this session on curriculum design. So first of all, what is your aim or intent for RE, and how is that vision informed? Informed by your school's distinctive Christian vision. Then, how is your curriculum map coherent and sequential? How is it being built and designed carefully in the light of your intent for RE as a means to achieve your intent for RE? Thirdly, why have you chosen the units that you have for your pupils in your context? What is their learning journey, and why is it important for you as a school that that curriculum design that you have for RE is as it is? And that's, as we've mentioned, is going to be different for each school, although there may of course be significant overlaps. And finally, what is the knowledge journey that you're going to take pupils from their time with you to the end of their time with you? And this goes beyond saying, oh, we're doing Islam in year 3 and we're doing Islam in year 6, or we're doing Sikhism in year 1 and we're doing it again in year 4. That may be the case, but what are they learning the first time they encounter that religious tradition, and then how is that being built on the second time or the third time or the fourth time they encounter it? So that brings an end to our narrated PowerPoint on curriculum design in RE. I hope that you found it useful in some respect, and apologies for the time, but it seems like my teeth have fallen out. I'm more than happy to support you in any way that I can with this, and I've placed my email address at the bottom. So if you want me to have a look at your curriculum maps, or if you want to schedule a time to have a bit of a phone call or a Zoom conversation, I'm more than happy to do so. But I wish you all the best in terms of your curriculum design in RE, and yeah, hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.